Welcome to the Breaking News Bears podcast. I'm your host, Chris Capone, joined alongside my co-host, once again, the illustrious Evan Davis. And all-star voting has opened up across the MLB, where fans can vote daily for their favorite position players across baseball, but not pitchers, to represent each team across the major leagues. So with all-star voting open up, Evan, who do you think are some candidates to break out and become first-time all-stars now that we're officially in the voting season?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, pitchers aren't included in the All-Star voting, but I think we should still at least highlight a few. When we talk about position players, for catcher, I was thinking William Contreras for the National League, and as a Dodgers fan, I'm kind of debating who would I vote for, Contreras or Will Smith. In the voting that I did, I ended up giving it to William Contreras just because. I don't think people really, no one certainly expected this type of breakout. We knew he had the offense. He was mainly traded for his defensive abilities, but just the way he's been able to mash the ball and he's really built up this Brewers offense, a team that we thought was going to be a bottom feeder, is now leading the division. So I'll go one, you go one. I got William Contreras of the Milwaukee Brewers representing them in some fashion.
Yeah, my next All-Stars, I'm gonna pick from the bottom of the barrel. I'm gonna go with the Oakland A's, and I'm gonna pick Mason Miller. Now, obviously, the Oakland A's are strapped for talent. They don't really have, that much of a deep lineup top. Like, there's nobody really shocking you in the Oakland A's. And obviously, Mason Miller is the one person where he is the star for the A's right now. He's locking down games and he's just shutting out batters. He's throwing gas. He's the one pick for the Oakland A's, and I'm picking to be a first-time All-Star.
Yeah, and I think, let's go pitcher for pitcher in the American League. Tariq Skubal, who is arguably the best pitcher in baseball right now, a southpaw with the Tigers, just a disgusting pitch mix. And his fastball, like when a left-hander throws even a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, it's impressive. But when Skubal's dotting 101 on the radar gun, that's just superb. And I think we kind of expected this coming into the season, not like a 1.8 ERA, 1.8 ERA, but we certainly expected growth. We saw last season how he kind of trended in that direction, and then he started off the year like that. And on a Tigers team that is still also kind of strapped for talent. I mean, I think Riley Green could be the only one that would really contend with him. But I just think when you go one per team, Tariq Skubal has to be no doubt.
Now, I'm going to pick another pitcher, but this time from the opposite side. I'm going to pick a righty. I'm going to go with Seth Lugo to be a first-time All-Star. And the 34-year-old has really been uh like electric to start this year. He's had a couple uh rough starts recently. He went 7 innings, gave up 4 runs to the Yankees, and the game and the his last start before that, he gave up 5 runs in 6 innings against the Guardians. But the Royals are one of those teams where they're going to get two All-Stars, I believe. I personally believe Bobby Witt obviously is going to be the first
Yeah.
All-Star for the Royals, and they might even get three with Salvador Perez, with the way that he's been playing. But I think Seth Lugo has to be in the rotation for the All-Star game just because his ERA, even though after his recent two rough starts, he's still at a 2.36 ERA. He's leading the American League in wins currently. I think he's a shoe in, and currently in innings pitched and batters faced. I think Seth Lugo has to be one of the pitchers in the rotation for the All-Star game.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with the American League here with you, and then we'll make our way to the National League. But we go down to the Tampa Bay Rays and Isak Paredes, who has honestly he should have been an all-star last year, in my opinion. I just, with the one per team and the Rays kind of in that 3-4 hole. Last year in the AL East standings, they only really got one. But you look at Isak Paredes last year, he batted 250, but he still had 31 home runs, 98 RBIs, and 840 OPS. And then this year, you see the batting average up to 287, 10 home runs, 37 RBIs. So he's kind of hovering around that pace still as we reach the 33, one-third mark of the season, closer to 40%, but still an 843 OPS and on a team where Randy Rosarina, in and out with injuries, not really living up to the hype as we've seen in the past. I think Isak Paredes is a perfect pick for the Rays.
Yeah, so you said we'll move on to the National League, and another first-time All-Star that's also going to be picked from one of the bottom of the barrel teams is going to be Ezekiel Tovar. Now, Ezekiel Tovar has been a really bright spot at that shortstop position for the Colorado Rockies so far. Just 22 years old. He's hitting 292, 11 home runs, his OPS of 814. He's really just been a solid piece in that Rockies lineup that really have no other solid pieces. Everybody else is mush at this point. Last year they had, Elias Diaz was their one All-Star representative. I think this year it could go either way between him and Cal Quantrill, but
Hmm.
I personally think they'll just give it to the younger shortstop at for Ezekiel Tovar, but who's also been really good. Cal Quantrill's another one of those guys where
Hmm.
a pitcher who's been in the league for a long time, across multiple different teams, but I think Ezekiel Tovar would be the one choice at the shortstop position for the Rockies.
Yeah, and we stick with shortstops in the National League and we talk about like bottom feeder teams and I go with Mason Wynn with the St. Louis Cardinals. Goldschmidt and Arenado aren't living up to these final years of their contracts, which is expected, with age and attrition and everything. But you look at Mason Wynn, a 305 batting average. He's only struck out 41 times in 59 games after being a little bit of a strikeout problem in his first handful of games in the major leagues, but 23 RBIs as well, 22 runs scored. He's kind of been at the top of the lineup and he's a threat on the base paths as well. He had a little bit of a hit streak going on about eight, or was it like 6 or 7 games that he had going? It's died down a bit, but this is a guy that's still capable of doing a lot.
It's funny because the MLB is like having to have a representative from each team makes it so much easier to pick like first time all-stars because you could see anybody on like a team and just be like, wow, this team like the Chicago White Sox do not deserve an all-star. Like if this was any other sport where they could straight up skip you for having an all-star. But Garrett Crochet is one of those guys where for the Chicago White Sox who I'm choosing, uh he's been really good this year. He's been like I said previously, a bright spot for one of these really, really bad teams. The White Sox have been atrocious to start the year, but Garrett Crochet has really been one of those bright spots for them. After only appearing in 13 games last year, he's really developed into one of the top starters, leading the American League in strikeouts and leading the entire league in strikeouts per nine. It's just been, Garrett Crochet has to be the only all-star that the Chicago White Sox are deserving of.
Yeah, and I think, just to wrap this, when you talk about Crochet leading the American League right now in strikeouts with 103, really impressive stuff. I think just like one last one before we move on is Mackenzie Gore, another southpaw with the Washington Nationals. Obviously, the main piece in that deal for Juan Soto back in 2021, I believe. And you just see the return that the Nationals have gotten from that Juan Soto deal. You could argue it might have been the biggest win-win, or you could also even argue that the Nationals won that deal. They got their starting shortstop in CJ Abrams, who could also be an all-star this season, first-time all-star as well. And then you also have a guy like Mackenzie Gore, who's been the quote-unquote ace of your rotation, but he's the number one starter. He's got solid strikeout stuff, obviously the ERA isn't what most would hope for, but he's still a very young pitcher with a lot of talent who's able to take down some of the top lineups in the league.
Yeah, it's another thing talking about that deal with the Padres and the Nationals when Juan Soto originally got traded. Uh, Now that Juan Soto's not on the or on the not the Dodgers, now that Juan Soto's not on the Padres anymore, it's really looking like yeah, the Nationals fleeced that trade. The Padres ended up getting a year and a half of Juan Soto total and ended up having to move on from him again. There's no way anybody thinks that uh the Padres actually won that deal. You made it to the NLCS, but that's as far as you got. And you didn't get any real success with Soto. You didn't even make the playoffs last year after having one of the top teams and people thought they would be really contenders last year. You didn't make it with Juan Soto. But
Hmm.
anyways, moving on, we're going to talk about a team that's also struggling this year ever since the injury of Acuna Jr. Really exemplifying it. The Atlanta Braves, since really the end of April, have really been struggling. There was a tweet recently put out where since April 24th, no MLB team has scored fewer runs than the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves have scored the least amount of runs in that time span behind atrocious teams like the White Sox, the Marlins, the Athletics. Every team has outscored the Atlanta Braves since April 24th. Now, I just want to hear your thoughts about this, Evan.
God, I don't know what to do. I don't even know. Like, if you're an Atlanta Braves fan, like, what do you even do with this team? Like, I don't know what they do because they have the talent, they have the names like Olsen. Ozuna from the Braves is arguably an MVP candidate. He'll probably find himself in the top five at the end of the year. I can't imagine he swings into the top three if the Braves are a wild card team. But you still have Olsen, you still have Ozuna from the Braves, you still have Albies, you still have Riley. You just got back Sean Murphy. You have Chris Sale. You have Max Fried. Yes, you lost Spencer Strider, but you still had two solid arms. And I just don't know what's going on. Riley has just been terrible this year. Albies has been terrible this year. It's just the fact that you've scored less runs than the Miami Marlins over any stretch of time, and even the Chicago White Sox for that matter, is just it's depressing times in Atlanta.
Yeah, like their top players have just fallen off a cliff recently. It's really been shocking to see. Like Matt Olson went from 52 home run or 50 plus home runs last year to an OPS of 752 right now, as of currently speaking. And it's like with a player like Olson, you wouldn't expect him to fall off a cliff that hard in a 1 year time span. Uh, just continuing on about that, like Ozuna has been the only positive player above a 760 OPS for the Braves. Their second best player in terms of OPS right now is Travis d'Arnaud, 35-year-old Travis d'Arnaud. And how much of those stats do you think are inflated from the game he had 3 home runs? It's
Exactly.
it's really just shocking to see like the Braves have no pop. Like nobody else is in double-digit home runs besides Ozuna right now on the Braves. And it's
Ozuna
re
from the Braves.
Ozuna from the Braves right now. Their offense is atrocious. Nobody's getting on base, nobody's hitting for power, and nobody's really even stealing bases now that Acuna's out. There's no
Yeah.
traffic on the base paths. It's just dead out there. There's no hope as of right now until they add more arms or not arms, more bats at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and we saw the other tweet that was put out like since May 1st, the Braves have the hardest hit rate in baseball, but then they also rank in the bottom half of all extra base hit categories and batting average as well. But then I saw someone who tweet out just recently that like hard hit rate is kind of overrated. Like it doesn't really matter how hard you hit the ball because if the launch angle stinks, then like the ball's just not going to travel regardless. And you just look at this Braves team, and yeah, they say like, a 414-foot pop-up. Like that happens all the time to a bunch of teams. I don't think that's a justifiable excuse from the fan base to say, oh, well, the ball carried, it just didn't get out. Like we know the ballparks are like that. Like Gunnar Henderson still has 20 plus home runs, and he plays in a ballpark where left field is literally 5,000 feet away from home plate, and he's still able to find ways to get RBIs and home runs. Obviously, he's a pull hitter, whatever, we're splitting hairs here, but you just look at this offense and you just look at Brian Snicker and you wonder like, is he on the hot seat? Because you listen to his post-game press conferences and it's all just like, oh, we'll get him next time. Or like we'll get out of this slump eventually. Or like this stuff happens to all these teams. And like over a stretch of like 15 games, that's cool. But when the stats are showing over the last month and a half, your team has been horrible offensively, you got to stop saying to yourself that it's eventually just going to spark. Like there is something genuinely wrong with the Braves. And this was even before Acuna got hurt because Acuna has been horrible offensively this year, even after an MVP season. He's only batting like 222 on the year. I don't know whether they make a trade. I don't know if they got to send someone down, but they got to send a message to this team because they're too good to be this bad.
Yeah, it's really just been such a tale of like two teams where the pitching staff has been, in spite of the injuries to their pitching staff, they've still put out a really good rotation. Reynaldo Lopez has filled in expertly. Like he's been electric for the Braves, a 1.85 ERA.
Like they have one of the
Yeah,
best starting pitching rotations in baseball during this horrid stretch. The only problem is that they can't score runs. Like
yeah.
I can't remember the last time, like outside of that game against the Oakland A's when they put up a 9 spot and still lost 11-9, which just defines their season perfectly. I can't remember the last time the Atlanta Braves put up 5 plus runs. And that's crazy. Like no one was expecting the historic offensive season from last year where they hit 300 home runs. But could you at least give me like 66% of that? Like, could you have at least given me like maybe 200 home runs this year? I don't think that was much to ask.
It's really just been the top play. Like Matt Olson has fallen off a cliff. 54
Yeah.
home runs last
Nice draft pick,
last
Evan.
year. But up to only 9 home runs right now. Like there's no way that some of these players should just be like underperforming this poorly. Like we've talked about before where there have been players throughout the major leagues that have been struggling this year, like Randy Arozarena, Bo Bichette. But to see an entire lineup
Yeah,
for
this
a
is
team that's supposed
crazy.
to be a contender, besides one player, Ozuna from the Braves is the only player where it's like he's putting up similar production to what he did last year. Everybody else has just fallen off a cliff, and it's not even like a World Series hangover or anything. This is going to be the second year in a row that they've lost to the Phillies. Uh, After a 3-1 to the Phillies, this is the second year in a row they've done this, and they've just fallen off a cliff. It's literally unprecedented. I've never seen a team like this go from setting records last year to having the same exact team, adding Jared Kelnick, adding Adam Duvall, and just completely falling off.
Yeah, it's like to your point, I don't think I've ever seen where like an entire lineup, like it's not like,
One or
throughout,
two players, like
yeah, like throughout the season, you always have your top guys have a streak where they just can't put bat to ball. And like that's okay because then the other guys around them will pick them up.
step up.
But if Albies can't hit, and then you go next up and Matt Olson can't hit, and then Ozuna from the Braves hits a solo home run, but then Sean Murphy strikes out, like one guy can't win you a game. And the trade deadline, we've talked about it, we'll probably continue to talk about it. Like I don't know where the Braves go from here because like obviously they're going to be a wild card team just the way the Phillies are. But like, do you go all in for a wild card spot? Like, this isn't like when the Dodgers won 106 games and found themselves in the wild card. Like, the Braves at the very best will most likely win 90 to 95 games this year. And is that worth risking what's already a pretty subpar farm outside of like your top three? Like, is that even worth it?
At this point, I don't know. Like with the Braves, it's just so unprecedented to see something like this where you're hitting the piss out of the ball. Like the hard hit percentage is the best in baseball, but it's just a dry spell. It's like a desert out there. There's no runs. There's nothing going on. It's the weirdest thing you could ever see for an entire lineup to go through these kind of struggles, except for one person who's still putting up comparable numbers to what they did previously.
Yeah,
It's just you never see this.
no.
Moving on, we'll be talking about some of the Dodgers, including a new addition to the Dodgers as of today. But first, we're going to talk about Teoscar Hernandez, an addition from this past offseason where Teo has been balling recently, including that recent stretch against the Yankees where he had 3 home runs in 3 games. It's it's looking like Teoscar Hernandez is so back. And after that 1 year last year with Seattle, where he didn't really look like he had fun there, it, it wasn't looking like something that he was really enjoying. And who doesn't enjoy going down a couple states and going down to California and playing for the Dodgers, where you're protecting Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and uh, Freddie Freeman
Yeah, no, I mean, you saw that series against the Yankees, albeit without Juan Soto, but just to take two of the three games against the Yankees in New York is always just a great thing. And Teoscar Hernandez was just incredible in that series. You saw uh, in game one, he comes through with the two-run double in the top of the 11th. And then game two, he comes with the grand slam to really just put the game away. It was 4-2 in the top of the seventh inning, I believe it was. And then the door was just blown right out, 8-2. Good night, Irene. And then even in game three, hits the go-ahead home run before Glasnow served a pizza up the middle to Trent Grisham. Uh,
of all players, Trent
of
Grisham.
all play, yeah, of all players, as they're chanting, "We want Soto," and then he just smokes a 97-mile-an-hour meatball right down the middle. Uh, but you look at it like Teoscar this season, sixth in the MLB in home runs, 17, currently leading the Dodgers in home runs. I believe he's also leading them in RBIs, which I completely did not expect. Like I thought Teo would be like a six-hole hitter. I've never seen him really play before just because he's always been in the American League. But you look at it, at 861 OPS, his rankings in terms of National League outfielders are he's either ranking first or second in most offensive categories. His defense at times can be a little suspect, but his versatility, playing, being able to play left field and also being able to play right field for the Dodgers has really helped. He had a really nice catch in the first game against the Yankees. I can't remember who he robbed, but caught that ball right at the wall. Uh, just been an incredible addition. He talked about, bringing that he wanted to stay in LA. He's tired of moving, and I'm just kind of curious to see, do the Dodgers oblige? Do they offer him a contract? He's a 1 year deal right now, but who knows what happens?
Yeah, and it's with Teo, like moving on from last year, like he had 211 strikeouts last year, a 741 OPS, and he really didn't look like himself in Seattle compared to the two previous years in Toronto. And Teo in Toronto, the reason the Blue Jays ended up moving on from him was that suspect defense. They wanted to put their best defense out there and wanted to sacrifice offense. Now look at the Blue Jays offense. It's atrocious and they could really use Teoscar. And they were thinking of bringing him back this offseason, but Teoscar talked about it and that the money wasn't there. And how good would this Blue Jays offense be if they had Teoscar Hernandez actually in the lineup to be their DH instead of 39-year-old Justin Turner? Not doing too much on Justin Turner, but
Yeah.
Teoscar being out there at DH and occasionally playing left field or right field as he does now would be a lot better than having Justin Turner occasionally being out there playing third base or first base uh, for the
Well, our
Blue Jays.
DH spot's pretty locked up, but
Yeah.
he could, yeah. But I mean, you still talk about like the strikeouts is always going to be a problem with Teoscar. Like he already has 81 strikeouts now, which puts him on pace for 193, which isn't too far off from the 211 that he had last season in Seattle. But you talk about it like teams and managers would rather prefer a guy that strikes out 100 times but gives you 36 home runs than a guy, maybe like, not to throw shade, but a guy like Luis Arias who will hit 325 but still has like a 765 OPS because all he's doing is slashing singles up the middle. So I think you'll definitely take it. He's definitely going to get a big bag this summer. I don't know in terms of security how much he gets because he'll be uh 32 when the new season starts. So do you see maybe like a 3 year deal somewhere around like 75 million total? Who knows?
Yeah, it really depends on which teams offer him. Because I remember the Red Sox were one of those teams where they offered him
Yeah.
basically the same amount of money that the Dodgers gave, but it was over the span of 2 years, where he could just go to the Dodgers for 1 year and make all that money and go back on the free agent market. Now, I don't know if some team is going to vastly overpay for Teoscar's services. Now, you know what you're going to get offensively most of the time. He'll give you around that 25 home runs every year, even if he's off. Like basically in every full season since 2019, he's had 25 home runs at least.
Mhm.
Obviously 2020, it was the COVID year, but he had
Yeah,
16 home runs still.
which is
Uh
pretty impressive over
yeah,
50
60.
games.
Yeah. And even then, that wasn't even the full 60 game schedule for him. He only played 50, but you know what you're going to get offensively from Teoscar most times is going to be one of those high strikeout guys that's going to hit for power. He's going to be one of those high OPS guys, like around the 800s,
Hmm.
850s. But with Teoscar, you don't know about the defense. And I don't know if some team's going to offer him a 3 year DH deal
Yeah.
or like kind of like a Jorge Soler type of thing where you're mainly paying him to hit the ball,
Hmm.
but occasionally playing in the outfield too.
Yeah.
But with Teoscar, that's one of those guys where I would love to see Teoscar, stay on a contender, preferably not the Dodgers, but it would be one of those because I love Teo. I wish the Blue Jays never had traded him, but because especially now the return that they had got for him, it's Swanson and Adam Macko, and Swanson has been, you
Oh my
know,
God.
rough. I give Swanson a pass, like the trauma that he had before the season with his son.
Yeah.
That's like
No,
you
that
never want to see
sucks.
that happen to a player, but I still love Teoscar, and for every bad defensive play he had over the years, he still hit the piss out of the ball sometimes.
Yeah. And like I've just like I don't know. Like I try to watch as many Dodger games as I can. Like I haven't really seen that big of an issue with Teoscar Hernandez defensively. Like, everyone has a blunder here and there, but I think he's been pretty solid. Obviously, I'm saying this on June 12th, and there's still like 3 more months of regular season baseball left. But he has a 2.2 WAR right now, which is what you'll take from a six-hole hitter who plays every day, which is a huge testament to him. Like, obviously, the team takes him out if there's a big lead, but he plays a lot.
Yeah, I haven't seen much Dodger games. But I remember there was the one foolish baseball clip that he had posted on Twitter where Teoscar tries to stretch singles into doubles. Like it was last year, like him on the Mariners, where it would be like the most like single for like 90% of the league, except for like the really upper echelon, like
Fast guys.
10%. And he thinks he's in the 10% where he thinks he can stretch it into a double, but he just gets out. And it's normally by like a mile. Have you
I haven't
seen many
seen any.
situations?
No, I haven't
Yeah,
seen anything like that.
I
I think that
think,
was just a middle finger to the Mariners, just being like, "Get me out of here."
yeah, I think the coaching staff for the Mariners must have done something wrong to him, or the Dodgers running coaching staff said, "You're not running. If it's a single,
Yeah,
stop. We're holding up the sign for you at first base, and you're not running through it."
just a huge red stop sign.
Yeah. Uh, Now talking about one of the Dodgers' newest additions, Kevin Biggio has officially been traded from the Toronto Blue Jays after being DFA'd about a couple days ago. Um, what do you think about the Jays or the Dodgers' newest addition? Now, Kevin Biggio is one of those guys where he leads the league in chase percentage or not chasing balls out of the zone, where Juan Soto is second, but Kevin Biggio just doesn't swing, man. Watching this guy at the plate, he will look at a pitch right down the middle, and it's like, dude, the bat's doing nothing on your back. Let it like just swing the bat, get some contact.
Like, pretend you care.
Yeah, like there's so many times where Biggio will come to the plate and it'll just be three straight strikes and he's just looking. It's like, oh, Biggio goes down looking. It's he has a really good feel for the strike zone. Like if a ball's out, he knows it's out. He won't swing. He'll get the call for a ball. But it's rough watching him swing or not swing. And now with Kevin Biggio being active for the Dodgers and Miguel Vargas being sent down, what are your thoughts on potential trade packages involving Miguel Vargas?
Yeah, well, first, like with Kevin Biggio, like I woke up this morning and if like I don't like Andrew Friedman anymore because who makes a trade at 6 o'clock in the morning? Like waking up to like
Real freaks.
yeah, I wake up and I open my phone and like I have the score app and everything with the Dodgers up and it says Kevin Biggio to the Dodgers and I'm like what? Like what are we doing here? Like and I don't know if I was more surprised by the fact that Kevin Biggio got traded to the Dodgers or by the fact that now that he's on the like that there were four guys on the Dodgers previously with a worse WRC plus than Biggio right now. So I don't know which, you know, concerned me more, but you just look at Biggio. I mean, I don't know where they're going to put him defensively. I've heard that they're going to put him at third base, because now that Max Muncy is like now slowly progressing back. Having Miguel Rojas at third base just did not work. Kike Hernandez has kind of been controlling that from time to time. So maybe Kevin Biggio goes there. He could obviously play second base as well. Uh, First base is occupied, so we don't need that. We don't need first base, Kevin. Uh, but you look at Miguel Rojas and I'm sorry, not Miguel Rojas, Miguel Vargas, who he has what it takes. He's a traditional third base shortstop kind of guy, but now you have Mookie Betts playing short for I hope not very long. So Vargas started the season at OKC in AAA playing left field, and I just think it's because the Dodgers don't trust his defense, but they want his bat in the lineup. So I'll get to the point. I like look, we talked about teams last podcast that we did. I would totally see, and I could totally see the Dodgers packaging Miguel Vargas in a deal to get Willy Adames from the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers are in a horrible division. I like. Adames is going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. In the final year of arbitration, you package Miguel Vargas, you give them Nick Frasso and maybe like a lower end prospect because you're only getting a rental for Adames, but I could still totally see the Dodgers re-signing him and get Mookie Betts back to right field.
Yeah, like with Kevin Biggio, I saw a tweet where it's like the term super utility man is only used for when a player sucks at the plate and is just able to be flexed around defensively. And it's so true. Like Biggio really is that super utility man role where he can play multiple positions. He's played, especially last year, he played a lot of second, he played a lot of right field, he played a lot of first, and he played even some shortstop and some third. Uh, I think he played shortstop for an inning last year. But it's really one of those things where, you know, Biggio has been really out of place in the Blue Jays lineup for the last couple of years. His WRC plus has been in the dumps, and his best year was the COVID year. So you really don't know. Like the last 4 years, his OPS has been under 710. Last year, his OPS was at 710, and that was the highest it's been since COVID. Um,
Biggio starting at third base today. Breaking news.
oh my goodness.
I just said how he might be third base. Kevin Biggio batting ninth and playing third. Oh, I gotta tune in tonight.
Oh,
I
must
was
see
saying,
TV.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. But I
No,
had jokingly said to my dad, should we go to the game tonight to see Kevin Biggio's debut? And
he's
he's
wearing
like,
number
yeah,
6, right? He's wearing
yeah,
Trey Turner's number.
yeah. But my dad's like, yeah, out of all the guys on the Dodgers, that's who I want to see is Kevin
Yeah.
Biggio. But I apologize. Keep going. Breaking news, though.
Yeah,
Breaking
no,
news.
no worries. It's just funny with when it comes to Vizio. Like you really only see the term super utility man used when it's somebody who's been awful, like
Yeah,
at the plate, and they just
yeah,
put them at every other position.
yeah. Super utility, Chris Taylor
Yeah.
or
Kike
Kike
Hernandez.
Hernandez. Well, yeah,
The big three of super utility men. You got Kike Hernandez, Kevin Biggio, and Chris Taylor.
yeah. I think like, well, I mean, at least out of the three of those, Kike Hernandez does show up in October, but like throughout the regular season, he's kind of terrible, and then in October, he's like an actually solid hitter. But you look at Biggio, and I think just one thing is that he had to get out of Toronto. Like, I just think sometimes it's your time's up, and maybe this new start in LA, he's under contract for next year as well. Uh, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Moving on. So we talked about it last episode. Now, Luis Robert could technically can possibly be traded at the trade deadline, and the White Sox reportedly want a Soto-like package in return for the right-handed power hitter. With lots of term left on his contract, he won't be eligible to be a free agent until I think it's 2027.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you think there's any realistic offers for teams that, or do you think there's any teams that would be looking? I previously said last episode that I think the Braves should try and sell everything. Do you think there's
Yeah.
any other team that you think could be out there that could want to move for Luis Robert?
I do, but like I just think a Soto-like offer. When I heard that, and that's like when I typed it in, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, even without the injury problems with Luis Robert, he's nowhere near Juan Soto.
No.
Just the effect that he has, both just defensively at the plate, the way he's able to work pitchers and just like set the table for the guys behind him. Luis Robert could play all 162 games. He would still never get the type of offer that Juan Soto would get. And if you're the Chicago White Sox, you have the one of the worst farm systems in baseball that you're at the point where just take anything you can get. Like you're gonna sell, you're most likely gonna trade Crochet. I don't know how much you're gonna get for him because he's never pitched this much in a season before. So Luis Robert should be the main guy you're looking to deal if you want like a big splash. And you talk about teams that could be interested. The Philadelphia Phillies are one. I just don't know what it is that they would give up because there are guys who are saying, yeah, you got to give up three of your top five prospects for a guy that's only played 100+ games once in a 5-year career just seems stupid. Uh, like I don't know. I could see the Phillies doing it. The Braves, they got to figure out what move they're gonna like, what position they're honestly in. Uh, Low key, and hear me out. Low key, because I've been talking to my dad about this. The Pittsburgh Pirates,
Mm,
they have prospects in their system. You look at a guy like I think they have Henry Davis, who is a great hitter, but he can't play defense. Like he is one of the worst defensive catchers. I just think the way that they're set up for the future, you have Paul Skeens, you have Jared Jones, you have Brian Reynolds. Add in another big bat in Luis Robert.
yeah. Um, Especially because their center field position right now is lackluster. It's G1 Bay, it's Michael A. Taylor. You should probably try and trade some prospects and get a 26er. He's also older than Juan Soto and has done way less than Juan. So I don't know how
Soto
you're
won a World Series before he could drink.
yeah, like I don't know how they're thinking of getting a similar package to Juan Soto for Luis Robert Jr. Like, yes, he had an incredible year last year, but there's no way you're getting even close to the offer that people would get for Juan, or that the Nationals got for Juan Soto.
And like you look at it and you look at the Pirates prospects. I mean, obviously, like Tamar Johnson and Paul Skeens are most likely untouchable. Tamar Johnson's like one of the best middle infielders, and he's a left-handed bat. Like one of the best young and up and coming middle infielders, and he's doing really, really well. He's doing solid at high A in his first season. But you look at them, like, could a guy like Braxton Ashcraft, who's their sixth best prospect, could he be like the backbone in that deal? And then maybe you give up a guy like Hunter Barco and a guy like, maybe another one like Michael Kennedy. Like these are guys, or I'm sorry, Hunter Barco, and then a guy like Shalene Polanco. Like these are guys that I think would be for Luis Robert, just because not as accomplished as Soto, injury history, and if you're trying to get rid of him before he needs a big contract, now is the time because of the control. The offers are going to get worse and worse the longer you hold on to him on a season to season basis.
Yeah, it's just a crazy situation right now where they're overvaluing a player like that who he's had one really good year and hasn't been healthy for the rest out of 5 years. Even this year, he hasn't been healthy at all. So I don't know. It's just weird.
Like he was just out for a month. Like he
Yeah.
just got back last week after being out for a month. And like another team that we could say, maybe like have a quick conversation before we head out, is the Philadelphia Phillies, who are already so dominant. They could use another outfielder. Like they have Castellanos, they have Schwarber. And although Luis Roberts also kind of like a high strikeout guy, now you got three of those in your lineup, he's still another guy that can make it,
Who can mash?
who can mash, who can make it 1-0 before you turn the TV on.
Yeah.
Uh you look at it like a potential offer that they could do. Like some people were throwing it out around Mick Abel, and I'm like, okay, like Mick Abel might have been in a deal for Juan Soto, not Luis Robert.
Not
Like
Luis Robert. Current
Mick Abel,
year.
yeah,
Hmm.
like if let's say that this is like right now, and let's say this is right now with Luis Robert, but then like we're in Soto 2021. Like Mick Abel would be in the Soto deal. He's one of the best right-handed
Yeah.
pitchers that are up and coming in the game. He's got like great, I mean, like he's still working it out in AAA, but AA numbers were very solid. I mean, he's still probably like 2 seasons away, but he's only 22 and he's already in AAA for a pitcher. Like it's harder for a pitcher to make it up the rankings than a hitter, and he's already at AAA.
Yeah.
Like him in a deal like that, like doesn't, I don't know. I don't see it. I think you give up, if you're the Phillies, you give up a prospect that's maybe ranked in the 8 to 10 spot, somewhere in that, and then you throw in like a 15 and a 17.
Yeah. I think that's the best thing that you would get for Robert right now, especially just because you really don't know what you're gonna get. But anyways, that'll just about do it for this episode of Breaking News Bears. I once again want to thank my co-host Evan Davis for joining me on another episode. I want to thank all of you listeners for listening to this podcast. We'll come back and see you next time.